for being the
Sure.
first one. So Rick, tell us a little bit about yourself, about when you, first about your personal, when you moved into Radburn.
Well, I moved to Radburn in 1989 with my wife, Lindy Washburn. And the way we found out about Radburn was that Lindy is a reporter, was and is a reporter at the Record. And especially in those days, newspapers were very good about uh, uh, giving their reporters reimbursements for continuing education. She was covering planning at the Record, so she took a planning course in the graduate school of Columbia University, in their school of planning. And there was a young guy, much younger than her in the class, named Ray Orlando. And he volunteered, I guess, to lead to help with a field trip of Radburn. Of course, his mother was Louise Orlando, who was the manager at that time.
Ah,
So Lindy was about 7 months pregnant, I think, with our first son, and she came out to Radburn with the class and was blown away by this place that she had never heard of or seen, even though she'd been working at the Record for probably 5 years, 6 years at that point. And so following year, we bought a house here and we've been here ever since.
so you would lived here since 1989, I believe you said, right?
Correct. Hmm.
Okay. So, when you moved in, what were some of what caused you to move in? I know you both
Hmm.
found it, but what was like the mark that said, oh, we gotta move into Radburn?
Well, I guess the first question is, why are you moving? We were living in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. This was 1989. Crime was pretty much peaking at that point. We lived on West 95th Street, a block from the park. It was a nice block, but somebody was murdered outside our building. And our son by that time was he was about a year and a half, and so we just thought it'd be good to move. And so we looked around. We looked at Ridgewood, we looked at Teaneck, but Radburn seemed special. There was nothing quite like it, and we just found the story of Radburn to be so interesting. It has a story, as you say, unlike any other place, and I think that really that steered us in that direction. And also, I think there's a real sense of community. Um, uh, which, sort of oddly, Radburn is, to the extent that it's famous, Radburn is famous for its plan, for separating automobiles from people, from turning houses around away from the street and so forth, all of which is interesting. But I think its real achievement has been this sense of community.
I agree. I agree. And when did you do so many writings for us for the bulletin on the historical committee, and so you would know this better than me. When did Radburn become a historical community?
I believe that it was placed on the National Register of Historic Places, I think in the 70s. I'm just kind of blanking on that. But I
That's
know
okay.
it became a National Historic Landmark in 2005, and that's a really special designation. Only 2,500 places in the country have it.
Wow.
And that's what our plaque really, the plaques, the tunnel and the stone bench
Wow.
commemorate.
I mean, what does that mean, Rick? Because you know landmarks, historical landmarks. Well, what actually does that mean?
If you were in New York City and you're a New York City landmark, that would be a different thing. There are restrictions on what you can do to the exterior of your property. And so a lot of, let's say, churches, they don't want to be historic landmarks because they don't want to have any controls. Now, for us, it's a totally different story. It's a Department of the Interior designation. It's just sort of a way of marking the fact that this is historically important. I believe also National Historic Landmarks can be eligible for tax credits to fix them up, keep them the way they're supposed to be. I don't quite know how that would apply to entire community, but mostly it's an honor. It's just a way of telling people, hey, this is special. Take a look at it.
And it is. It's been here for 90 years, am I correct, or 100 years?
Well, the first people moved in April of 1929.
Right. I've written many articles, which I just mentioned. So what is your, tell our audience a little bit about you, or tell our neighbors a little bit about your career path?
Right. I actually thought I was going to be a lawyer. I graduated from the Boston College Law School, but all the years of college and law school, I was working summers at a local newspaper, you know, chasing fire engines to fires and reporting on murders and crime, things like that, and just breaking news. And I just really loved it. And so by the end of law school, I said, I didn't enjoy law school that much, but I said, this journalism thing's a lot of fun. So I got a job with the Associated Press. I worked there for about 2 decades
Wow.
in New York and Richmond and Springfield, Mass. And then I was hired by USA Today in 1997. I spent another 20 or so years there. And I took a buyout at the end of last year. And so ever since then, I've been sort of interested in trying to find out more about Radburn history,
Right.
which
And you've
you know
been
is
writing,
fascinating.
it's really, a gift that your career kind of ties into Radburn, where you write us articles or write, very interesting perspectives on Radburn. It's almost like a different pair of eyes looking at it, because you're looking through a news eyes. You're looking for things that are interesting, and you kind of have the gift to see those things, to find those things, to kind of look at things through a different pair of eyes.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, certainly a lot of people like Larry and Felice Koplik who've done a lot of research on Radburn, and you know, it's great to have that available. My own thing is to try to think about a little bit more as even a news feature or something like that, to put it in that context. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit, do you have any children? Tell us a little bit about your family.
Sure. Sure. Well, my son Jack, who's visiting us now, for instance, working here at 5 Bristol Place, uh, was moved with us here in 1989, and my son Nick was born in 91. He now lives with his wife in Austin, Texas. But
Wow.
they really loved growing up in Radburn. They've made friends here. They've kept all their lives, either through the school or just through Radburn itself. Um, and the old thing is safe for children. That was the original advertising slogan for Radburn. But
Wow.
it was more than safe for children. I think it was good, and I think it was stimulating for children also.
Right, right. And did they attend like playgroup and all those events?
Yeah, I think they did it all. I mean, they were in Talat. They were in playgroup. They were playgroup counselors with all that entails, and they were on swim team,
Wow.
and they were
Lifeguards.
lifeguards of varying skill.
Yeah, yeah. But that's what I love about this community. What are some of the things that you like to do around town? Like, what are some of the places that you like to go to eat? What movies do you like? Let's get a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, let's find out.
Well, um, when years ago, Lindy was a restaurant reviewer for the Record, and so we spent a lot of time. That was a great job, right? It was a sideline. She was mostly a healthcare reporter, but she
Yeah.
would also review restaurants. So to some extent, we kind of got that out of our system, and she's such a good cook that now we tend to just eat at home, I would say. So I'm not a great one now for restaurant
Restaurants.
views. We don't eat out that much. Um, and even before the pandemic, we were streaming more and more movies at home. So it wasn't like we were regulars over at the Garden State or anything
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. But what kind of like what do you like? Do you like historical movies? Do you like old movies? Do you like what type of movie is your favorite to go
Yeah.
see
Well,
or to see at home?
I don't really like big budget, movies. We prefer sort of alternative, Hollywood movies, but something, has a story to
Right,
it, good acting, and that's not a blockbuster that has to play all over the world in all languages. Looking for
right.
something maybe a little bit more, subtle. If
Maybe a documentary or something?
Yeah, we love documentaries, but that's mostly the domain of streaming, isn't it? You're
Yeah.
not going to see a doc. I mean, we used to go to the Hawthorne theaters all the time, and for the most part, you wouldn't see a documentary there.
Right.
So yeah, but I mean, there's so many great docs on the streaming services now. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I
it's
mean, I think it's
great.
very, it's good to me that, you know, we have Netflix now and we have
Mm,
Hulu, is that what
Hulu,
it's
yeah,
called?
yeah,
Hulu. And I mean, there's just so many different sources
yeah,
to stream that it's pretty incredible what we can do from home, that what we
right.
can do from home.
It is. I wish somebody would make a great documentary about Radburn. That would be a
Hmm.
thing
Well, that could be
to see.
you, Rick.
I'm not a filmmaker, but we could find
Yeah.
a filmmaker, we'd be in business.
What kind of music do you like? What are some of your favorite songs, you know?
Yeah, I like folk music. You know, either traditional folk music, you know, Irish or whatever, or contemporary, folk music. I guess I like, you know, like everyone else, I like Springsteen and Elvis Costello and Jackson Brown and those people from my generation. Some of whom are still making new music, but I suppose I'm not as plugged in as I used to be to new music for whatever reason. But not to bore you with my consumption habits, but I also got, you know, a subscription to Spotify uh, around the time this began, and so, you know, the world is at your ear tips. Anything you ever wanted to hear or remembered hearing, it's there. So that's been
So,
great too.
is there anything that you think would be interesting to our audience? A little tidbit about your life?
Well, something that might resonate with members of my generation is that when I was at the Associated Press in 1980, I covered, I was the lead reporter on John Lennon's assassination in December of
Oh my God.
1980. I was working the overnight at the Associated Press New York Bureau, and I was coming in maybe like 11 o'clock or something, 11:15, and the night editor is running down the hall, practically airborne. He's running so fast, and he says, "Lennon's been shot. Get up to the Dakota." So I just turned around and I spent a few hours there, and then I went to the press conference where they confirmed that Lennon was dead and said that we've arrested John David Chapman, you know, in his murder.
Oh my
And then I
God.
spent the next day just writing the story. Um, so that was that was something else.
And where do you find your information to write? Like, where do you go to find your information to write?
Well, when I was still working, I would try to read everything. I was working for national organizations, and so I would try to read local sources, weeklies, whatever, just for an interesting idea that often, you know, it was written for a local audience in a certain way. But if you see a great story there, you can turn it around and present it to a national audience, which still appreciates it, but you put it in a different way with more context. If we're writing something about Radburn, I would say you'd have to explain all to people what Radburn is, um, you know, and do it that way. But that was a great way to get stories. Is just reading, because you can't wandering around the streets isn't very efficient. You've got to try to maximize your time.
Yeah. I mean, it must have really been, I mean, that's something that you knew exactly where you were when that happened. You know,
Yes,
it's almost like when Elvis, you know, died. I remember where I was when that
right.
happened with Diane, what's her name? How did it feel when you heard that John Lennon, because John Lennon must have been, since you like that kind of
Sure,
music, he
sure.
must have really affected you.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, John Lennon, obviously, I love the Beatles. John Lennon was a hero of mine, but you're under such pressure to get the information, get it out. Uh, there was no, my primary emotion was just fear and anxiety, you know, knowing that this was one of the biggest stories of the decade
Hmm.
and I was covering it.
Wow.
So I didn't certainly have any time to think about what it meant at the time. There's about a week later, there was some like a ceremony, a service at the band shell in Central Park, and I went there with a friend of mine, and it sort of sunk in then. But that was like a week later. For the first 24 or 48 hours, it was sort of all adrenaline and just do the job and get the information and get it out.
Wow. I know it's almost like, you know, you have to stay focused. You have to
Yeah.
stay focused on what your job is and really not detach. It's almost like a doctor. You know, a doctor has to just do his job and find out what the problem is or what the remedy is, and just
Right.
do that and not really feel it, because otherwise you're not doing your job effectively. You know, you want it to do your job effectively and honor John Lennon. So,
Right. Right.
wow, that's incredible. Well, it really is a pleasure talking to you. I miss, you know, you playing basketball in the Grange and passing us by every day or every other, was it 3 times a week?
About that. I wasn't every day. I can't
No.
do that.
Yeah, yeah. But I remember you were faithful. You came by, you waved, you
Yeah.
walked by. Is there any other like that was something you were dedicated to do? What are you dedicated to do now? So you just play in another environment now 3 times a week?
You know, the Radburn floor is wood. It's a nice forgiving floor, so you're able to do it as much as you wanted. Yeah, but I play outdoors. But asphalt's a little bit harder on the old knees, but I still do it.
I know, I
Yeah,
know.
the thing I've been doing, the routine that I've really gotten into is I'm there's this organization called Family Promise of Bergen County, which primarily helps homeless families with children. But since the pandemic came, they've gotten much more into emergency feeding programs. There's one in Inglewood at St. Cecilia's Church, and one
Wow.
down at the county shelter in Hackensack. So I've been going to those places 2 or 3 days a week in the afternoon and helping to bring food to people who are living in motels who have been displaced from the county
Oh,
shelter, or people who drive up to St. Cecilia's because they need food. So
wow.
it's been a great privilege to be able to do that.
Yes, yes, yes. We are, you know, we are totally fortunate to be in the place we are. And so
We're
giving
so
back,
lucky. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's for sure.
we really are. We
Yeah,
really are. I mean, it's been challenging, but those that have been displaced, and you're correct, and without homes and without food and just it's it's sad. It's sad,
hmm
but you know, but there are people like you who are giving back, and thank you so much for being you, Rick. You're wonderful. Your writings just bring light to the bulletin. You know, I mean, the truth is that when you first started connecting with me was right when the pandemic started. So it
right.
was really important to bring a new dimension to the bulletin because we couldn't have all those events in the bulletin. So it was really a gift to the community to have something new to look at, something to research a little bit about the history of Radburn.
Yeah. Well,
So
there's a million, as you know, there's a million stories in our history. So, yeah,
yeah,
it's an inexhaustible resource.
yes. Well, you're going to do another one for the bulletin,
Yeah.
and you're going to get it to me soon because the bulletin is in the works.
Right.
And I
Right.
really want to thank you, Rick, and thank you also for providing some more names for getting to know your neighbors. I'm going to reach out to them, and if anybody would like to recommend names to someone that you believe would be a good getting to know your neighbors. And the truth is, they could just be a homemaker. They could just be whatever. Like, we want to get to know each individual for what they are and who they are. It would just be
Right.
incredible.
And I think
And
sometimes they're right next door. For instance, one person that I would really mention is my neighbor Liz Widehorn, who lives on Bristol Place, and she's a brilliant pastry chef. She has a website called, I believe it's Project Pastry Love, in which
mm,
she's both a good writer and a good pastry chef, and she puts it together on that website. And everybody should be looking at the website because it's great stuff.
I thank do. You, Rick. I mean, thank you so much
Thanks, Renee.
for
I've enjoyed it.
thank you so much for taking the time with us
No
today.
problem.
You're a
No
gift.
problem.
I'll talk to you
Okay.
soon, and
So are
you'll be
you.
getting that bulletin to me.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.